friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card similar to the one that I created during my Copic favorites rainbow and basic combo recommendations. So I had a lot of requests to do the background that I did on this card, so I'll be doing that today using the Hello Bluebird rainy day stamp set again, but I'll be using the other little girl, and I'll also be using a few images from Puddle Play. So I stamped out my scene on some Neenah Solar White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I won't be doing any die cutting today. I'm going to color in the entire panel with my Copics. I'm starting with the little girl, and for her skin I'm using E00, E02, and E11. Now I grabbed the E02 by accident. I meant to grab the E000, and so I decided to just go with it and see how it worked, maybe come up with a new skin tone. So I added the E11 first and then the E02, and then I began to blend that out with the E11 again because I noticed that the E02 was a little bit darker than the E11. And then I went on to my E00, but her skin was looking a little bit orangey to me, so I did end up grabbing that E000 as well and blending out the bottom half of her face where it would be in the most light, since her hair would be casting a shadow down on her face. And then I added in a little RV11 for some nice rosy cheeks. For her hair, I'll be using E51, E53, E55, and E57. I wanted to do kind of like a medium brown tone. So I'm starting with the E51 and laying in where I eventually want my darkest shades to go. I'm still pretty new to hair, so I always like to start with my lightest for that and kind of build the color up. That way I can correct any mistakes with the lighter color markers before it gets too dark and there's really no way to erase that. So now I'm going in with the E53 and just deepening up those darkest areas, making sure to put some shadow on the hair that's at the back of her neck and toward the bottom edges of each of the little sections, and also in the part, so that the areas on the left and right look a little bit more bumped out. So I deepen that up even more with the E55, and next I'll go on to my darkest, that E57. I'm also making sure to kind of put a little line where I want that part to be, just so I can see it, because there isn't really a line drawn for the part in her hair. So I'm just doing that myself with each shade of the marker. So once I have my darkest laid in, then I'm going to begin to blend back down in the reverse, starting with the E55 and just pulling that E57 out a bit so that we get a nice blend. I don't want a perfect blend because this is hair, but I do want it to, not have like blocks of color. So then I'm moving on to the E53 and just leaving a little bit of white space left for the lightest shade, which is the E51. And then once I have everything blended in, I always like to go back and add a few strands of the dark. And I usually go in with the second darkest first, just because I'm a little bit unsure of going for it with the darkest shade. So I kind of map it out for myself with the second darkest. And that way I kind of know where to put those streaks in when I come in with my darkest shade. So once I have those kind of laid in, I'll grab my E57 and begin to go kind of right over top of those, or as close as possible, and just add those low lights back in over the highlighted areas so it looks a little bit more natural. And I'm being really careful to use the very tip of my marker and light pressure so I can get a nice thin line. Now I should have tilted my paper when it came to that right side of her head, because it wasn't a very comfortable position to put those streaks in, so I wasn't really loving how they turned out on the right side. So I did go back with the E51 and kind of just blend over them to soften it up a bit. You can definitely still see them, but they're just a little bit knocked back. And then I got smart and tilted the paper into a more comfortable position and went back and added a bit more of the dark in. I know coloring hair is a process for a lot of us. It's not really easy or something that comes super natural to us. So just remember to tilt your paper and take it slow and do the best that you can. So I'm moving on to my red combination, which is R29, R39, and R59. And I'm going to start by coloring in the first section of the umbrella. And I'm going to have a 4-colored umbrella. I'm doing bright primary colors on this card today. Even though I loved the color combinations that I used on the first card, I definitely didn't want to color the same exact thing for you again, because what would be the point of watching that? So I decided to mix it up and go with the primary colors. So I'm going to skip over 3 more sections and then color another one red. So that way I'll have 2 of each, since there's 8 sections on this umbrella. And when I'm coloring the underside of it, I'm also going to add a shadow at the top, since the top of the umbrella would be casting a shadow down on the inside. I'm also going to color in her little skirt with this combo, because I thought it would be nice to bring that beautiful bright pop of red down toward the bottom of the scene as well. So I just started with the R59 right up under her jacket, and then I blended out with the R39 and finished with the R29. The next color combo I'm using is Y13, Y15, and Y17. So again, I'm going to put the darkest shadow there in the crease where the metal part of the umbrella is kind of outlining each section. And since the section that is going to be yellow on the underside of the umbrella is so small, I decided to color them both at the same time. So I just used the Y17 as my darkest and then blended out the edge of that with the Y15, really scrubbing over the edge of it to soften it up. And I ended up coloring the bottom section with just those 2 shades, since they would be in more shadow, and then use the Y13 on the top. It did push the Y15 back, so I added a bit more of that just to kind of bridge the gap. And then I'm also going to color in the little ducks with those same shades. So I'm using the Y17 down the back side of their bodies, and then blending forward with the Y15 and saving about half of them for that lightest shade, the Y13, especially since their faces are upturned and they would be catching whatever light is there. It is going to be a dark and moody scene, but I just wanted to keep their faces nice and bright. And then I use the YR04 to quickly color in their little beaks and feet. I just used the 1 shade since those little areas were so small. The next combo that I'm using is YG13, YG17, and G46. So the G46 is my darkest, and then I'm going to blend that out with the YG17, and then finish with the YG13 as the highlight. I am going to go over this blend one more time just to bring everything together and get it nice and smooth. And then I will skip over to the section underneath that's going to be green. And again, just do the shadows not only on the 2 sides, but also at the top. And blend out in the same way, just with the YG17 as the midtone, and then the YG13 as the highlight. To finish off the umbrella, I'll use B34, B37, and B39. So I'm laying in the B39 first, and then adding in the B37 to kind of soften up the edge of that, and then fill in the highlighted area with the B34. And I'm going to do the other little section on the far right blue as well. And I am pulling this color palette straight from the pattern paper that I will be using at the end of the video. So I decided not to make her jacket a raincoat. It really didn't look like one to me from the style of it. And I figured she's got her umbrella and her rain boots, so I'm going to give her a little jean jacket instead. So this is my favorite combo for jeans, and it is B93, B95, B97, and B99. So I'm using the B99 first to add some shadows anywhere where I think that they should go, like on the sides of her body, also like underneath the pocket and underneath the collar. I'm only going to use that B99 on the actual jacket, and then the cuffs and the collar and the pocket, I'm only going to use the B97 as the darkest. I mean, I put a shadow of the B99 under the pocket, but on the pocket, I'm going to just start with the B97 so that it looks a little bit like it's folded over or made from the back side of the material. So after I laid in the B97 everywhere I wanted it to go, I'm going to blend that out with the B95. And I will use the B95 to fill in most of the jacket area so that the B93 will really stand out on the areas that I mentioned. But I am going to leave a few little places for that B93, especially on the left side of her body, because for some reason I figured that that side was getting more light. I'm not sure why, since her umbrella is kind of tipped the opposite direction, but anyway, that's where I put my light source today. So I filled in almost everything that remained on her jacket with that B93, and then I decided to even add in the B91, especially on those lighter areas of the folded back material. I used YR23 to give her some copper colored buttons, and then I'm moving on to her shirt and tights. And for those, I'm using RV00, RV10, and RV11. I colored her shirt with RV11 and then decided to add a little bit of RV13 for the shadow. And I liked how that looked, so I kept the RV13, and I'm going to put a shadow down the inside of her legs and then also define her little kneecap, since I wanted those to be kind of clear looking tights, see-through tights, I guess. So I wanted her kneecap to be visible there. So I blended that out with the RV11 and then softened that up even further with the RV10, and then added just a touch of that RV00 over the front of the tights. For the umbrella handle, I started with C1, but I needed a little bit of contrast, so I did go back and add in some C3 as well, just to give me some shadows, especially under her hand and underneath the umbrella. And then for her little Wellingtons, I'm using G40, G43, and G46. And I added a shadow in the crease on the front and then started to blend that out with the G43, but I realized I needed a little bit of shadow on the back side as well, so I went back to the G46 and then blended that out again with the G43, and then I'll use the G40 as the highlight. So now I am finally ready to start doing my background, and first I'm going to take my colorless blender and kind of knock back some of the spots that got left behind from my marker caps during the rest of the coloring, and then I'm going to also add a piece of paper underneath to kind of absorb some of the saturation of the markers that I'm about to use. You are going to need a lot of ink to do a background like this, so you want to make sure that your markers are nice and juicy, and you probably want to have some refills, because after you get done with this, you probably will need to do some marker maintenance, just to give them, some ink so that they're nice and juicy for your next project. So I did lay in a defining line for the sidewalk with the C5, and I'm going to blend out the edge of that with the C3. I'm going to work on the bottom half of the card first, because I want to know where I need to stop with my rain background. So now I'm going to begin to bring in some of that C3 from the edges and just kind of pull that color in to create a little bit of a vignette around the outside edge. And I'm going to darken that up with the C5 again because I want a lot of contrast on there. I want it to look really dark and stormy. And then I'll go back with that C3 again and soften the edges of that. Then I will grab the C1 and begin to pull that color even more toward the center and really get it nice and soft so that I can add in some extra colors and that they'll show up there. So after I have the C1, I'm going to bring in the BG13. So I'm going to add a little bit of a blue tone so it looks like there is a lot of water kind of collecting on the sidewalk where they're playing. And then I'll blend that out with the BG11. And I will also color in the puddle with the BG11. And now I'm going to turn my paper and start working on the top half. And again, I'm using that BG11 to do some up and down strokes. So the sidewalk part, I made sure that every single stroke went side to side. And for the top part with the rain, I want it to look like it's falling from the sky. So every single stroke is going to go up and down. And you can start from the top of the page or the bottom of the page. It really doesn't matter. I like to start from the bottom just so I can try to get around my images. Now you could also color your background first, and that way you wouldn't have to worry about possibly accidentally pulling some of those colors into the background. But I'm going to add a few of the colors that I used on the card into the background anyway, so it really will be okay if some of that ink gets pulled upward. So now moving on to the C1, and I'm just doing the same thing, just laying in those initial layers of color and getting everything kind of saturated, and so that everything really blends nice and smooth. You still get that streaky look, but it's very muted like rain would be. I'm moving on to my C3, and again just swiping in that color, starting at that sidewalk line that I drew in and then pulling it up toward the top of the card. I will be trimming this card panel down just a little bit too, so that's why I don't have to be sure to go all the way to the top with every stroke, but you want to, take it as far as you can, especially if you're not going to be cutting your panel down. You want it to be consistent. I'm going to add a few of the darker colors behind her as well because I want it to look as though the rain is falling back there. But I do want to create a little bit of a lighter spot right around her just to kind of bring the focus in on her. So I've moved on to my B93. I want to add in some of the colors that I used on the card into the background. So that was one of the colors I used on her jacket. And you can even add in some fun colors. Like now I'm adding some Y11 just to add, some variations and something a little bit more unexpected maybe. I'll do the same with a little bit of the RV10. I'm just using soft versions of, those colors to pull that in. So now I'm ready to start really darkening things up. So I'm using my B95 at first, and I'm coming in from the sides. And I'm also going to occasionally go right over top of the image and, put a little bit of the color there as well, because you don't want it to look like the rain is like only falling behind them. You want it to be in front of them as well. But you just don't want them to lose focus, so you don't want to cover them up too much. So I'm darkening up with the C5 now, especially around the top and the sides, so I can kind of create that same vignette that I did at the bottom of the panel. I'm adding some BG13 again, so that the, same colors from the bottom are represented in the top. I just have more colors in the top than the bottom. It's beginning to be just a little bit too streaky, so I'm going to soften some of that with the BG11. And now I'm starting to let some of that color go in front of the images, especially with these lighter shades. So again, it doesn't look like it's just raining behind them. And I will do the same with the C3, even purposely going right across some of the images. I'll do the same with the B91. And, at this point, it's really just, how you want your panel to look. You can continue adding dark and light colors until you get a look that you're happy with. You could certainly stop right here if you wanted to, but I felt like it was getting a little bit too much the same across the whole panel, and I wanted to have that vignette look. So I did go back once again with my B93 and then again with my B95 on the sides and the top, especially to darken that up. And since the bottom is supposed to be a reflection of the sky, I did go in with that Y11 and the RV10 and just add a few quick streaks of that just to kind of brighten things up down there. I trimmed down that panel with the MFT A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, and now I'm going to stamp my sentiment from Puddle Play at the top using Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink. That's the same ink that I stamped my images with. And I am going to stamp that down twice so that I get a really dark impression against that dark background. So it says 100% chance of happiness when we're together. And then instead of stamping on the inside of the card, I'm actually going to do an insert. So I die cut a piece of white cardstock with that same die, and I'm stamping Rain or Shine, I'm Here For You, with another little puddle and a little duckling. The pattern paper that I'm using is from the Simple Stories Summer Farmhouse, and I die cut that with the largest of the MFT A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, and I'm going to adhere that down to a Blue Jay card base from Lawn Fawn, and then I'll glue the insert to the inside of the card so it really stands out against that dark cardstock. I added foam tape to the back of the panel so that I can pop it up and have a little bit of dimension on my card since the scene is all nice and flat. So I just peeled off the release papers and centered that on the card and pressed that down into place. And then while reaching for my white Jelly Roll pen, I actually found this Clear Star glitter pen. I'm not even sure if they still make these. This has to be at least 7 or 8 years old, and I probably haven't used it in that amount of time, but I thought it might be the perfect thing to add just for something different since I used a white gel pen on the other card. So I'm just going in and adding some streaks of that clear glitter just to add kind of to that rainy background. So I'm doing a few little streaks here and there, just being kind of careful around the sentiment. I really don't want, too much of that sentiment to get covered up. But I am occasionally going right over top of the image, just like I did with some of those lighter marker colors. Just so it looks like the rain is also in front. And then I also decided to just add a few little streaks from the sides on the bottom as well. Just a couple here and there so that the glitter, is kind of spread all over. And that's just a really subtle detail that you only kind of see in the light. And there you can kind of see it when I tip it. So there is another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete my card for today. There's the two different versions side by side. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know this was a super long video, but that's just how long that kind of technique takes you. So it's one of those ones to just kind of put on some music or an audiobook and have fun coloring. So thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can also ring the notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always end up in your feed. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.